Morning, Dan and Amy. And after 2 days of congressional testimony, what are we to make of this tender, kind-hearted philanthropist named Mark?
He's such a good heart.
He's a connector. He's a global citizen. He is...
He's a doer and a thinker, Dan.
He's an opponent of hate speech and a proponent of positivity. And he has a team. I don't know if you know... that
he used his team yesterday, too.
That are very much like him and help him with all of his good deeds.
If you'd like, I can have my team follow up with you after this. I'm happy to have my team follow up with you on more information if that would be helpful. Senator, I have not heard that. Mr. Chairman, I will have my team follow up with you on what information we have. Senator, I don't know. I do not know. We can follow up.
Okay, do that.
I can certainly have my team get back to you on any specifics there that I don't know.
It's like Santa Claus and his reindeer. It's Mark and his team.
Yeah.
Well, he spread gifts.
He used his team yesterday because when one Congressman, Billy Long, Republican
from Missouri.
Yeah, brought out a big picture, actually a gorgeous color photo of our girls, Diamond and Silk. Mark Zuckerberg, he asked him, like, do you know who these two are? And Zuckerberg, he had that schmarmy look on his face where he just wanted to rip his eyeballs out. He looked at his team and said, gestured, what? Yeah, that's Diamond and Silk. And he was very dismissive, and he's not taking my girls seriously.
Well, a lot of people are rallying to Diamond and Silk. We made them here on this show.
Exactly.
We've been Diamond and Silk colleagues for some time. But Tim Scott, several members of Congress brought up Diamond and Silk as an example of Facebook's conservative bias. And for more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by Wayne Cruz, who is the Vice President for Policy at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Wayne, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning, you all. Thanks for having me.
Good morning. One of the other things Billy Long said that I delighted in was that Congress is good at two things, doing nothing and overreacting. And he basically said to Mark Zuckerberg, we haven't done anything with Facebook right now. That means you should be careful about the desire to overreact. What was your takeaway from the 2 days?
Yeah, this was a really interesting couple of days of debates, and the main thing that you take away from it is there are three pieces of legislation that Congress is trying to introduce on privacy. That's what's really going on. Especially Ed Markey is interested in getting a privacy bill of rights in place. I don't think his legislation is a good idea for a variety of reasons, but interestingly, they couldn't pin Mark Zuckerberg down on any of the regulation. He was asked about it by Senator Dan Sullivan, for example. He said, well, don't you think if we put regulation in place that since you're already the big dog, you're going to be able to influence how the regulation comes about, and it's going to hurt competitors like the future Facebooks of the world, you might say. Mm-hmm. And Zuckerberg said yes to that. He agreed. That's one of the things. If you know how Facebook is accused of being monopoly, and I hear the arguments about them blocking conservative views, and I was joking. I was thinking, doesn't one of them try to get Zuckerberg to promise to eliminate virtue signaling and political correctness on the platform? But nobody ever asked that. They only ask about conservative views. But if they regulate, the interesting thing is Facebook will be here forever because it's going to be able to meet whatever privacy rules they put in place. And you heard him talk about the European privacy standards, and he's already implementing those worldwide. He said worldwide he's doing that.
Well, do you think
that Facebook's trying to appease regulators somehow to their advantage, I would imagine?
Yeah, but do you think after 2 days of testimony, on the Senate side and the House side, that his, he'll realize that they're squashing conservative views via Facebook? I mean, when you bring out pictures of Diamond and Silk saying you can't compare them to terrorists, do you think that they'll reverse some of the decisions they've made?
Yeah, the worrisome thing there was he had said that, we're going to introduce artificial intelligence that will be able to detect hate speech before it even appears. This is the problem. Who gets to judge what hate speech is, and how is that term being expanded to just controversial ideas? This came up on the first day of discussion. One of the Republican senators had brought this up. He said, well, who's going to determine this? How is Facebook, and why is Facebook determining it? What if there's a vigorous debate over abortion issues? or immigration issues or open border issues or things of that sort. And you notice some of the content that got flagged and taken down, you couldn't quite see why it had come down, but you would see something like the phrase open borders or sanctuary city. And something in Facebook's algorithm flagged that sort of thing and got it taken down. And, when he was asked about it, you got kind of what you all played at the beginning. You'd get a montage of, well, I don't know. We didn't mean to. I'll check with the team. So,
well,
it's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
I would say you have to be worried. Remember, one thing to keep in mind, though, there is a difference between government censorship and a private entity censoring. And
right.
I would much rather Facebook start deleting all conservative content, and then a rival say, okay, boom, we're in there now because Wall Street's going to fund us, the consumers are coming to us, the media is going to support, conservative media is going to support us better. Don't look at it this way. Don't panic too much over Facebook misbehaving, because another thing, too, is they're going to bring all these other tech companies in, too, for a similar grilling. But if Facebook misbehaves too badly, keep in mind MySpace, and keep it not just MySpace. That's become a joke that that Facebook overtook MySpace. Yeah. But keep in mind that remember Google tried with the Google +1 platform to be a rival social network to Facebook, and for a while people were trying to do it, but it just couldn't quite catch. But believe me, if a platform creates, and this is the dominant platform, but if they come out and be overly conservative biased, believe me, there's a big market for conservative and libertarian and free market and small government ideas, and it's going to be served.
Yeah.
So
the problem
has to keep that in mind.
The problem is, though, that Zuckerberg has those precogs from Minority Report who predict hate speech before it happens and can stop crime before it happens. So he's got an advantage there. Yeah. One of the other thing that was fun for me of the last 2 days is watching Zuckerberg, a man of the left, get a small taste, just a small taste, because he's so big, of what it's like for everyday Americans to get shaken down and pushed around by these ignorant mobsters in Congress. Anna Eshoo, who's a Democrat rep from California, is a good example of this. She was essentially, in her back and forth with Zuckerberg yesterday, arguing about what his business model should be. Essentially, she felt completely empowered to tell him what his business model should be, or to query him in an adversarial way about his business model, like Congress has any business dictating terms of Facebook's business model within the bounds of the law, much less anybody else's. But it was interesting. I'm sure he'll take nothing away from that experience, but it was nice to see him get carved up a little bit by people he otherwise supports.
Well, it was extremely interesting in that regard, because I remember Dianne Feinstein going after him. Now, she'd been tweeting the whole day about the equal pay campaign, and then she started asking Zuckerberg about fake news and misleading information on the internet. And I thought, my gosh, something like the equal pay campaign, just as an example, is a controversial debate that we ought to have all the time. But she was tweeting out a lot of the conclusions of it that have been highly contested, and then asking Zuckerberg about these questions. He was getting it from Democrats it's been a long time since I'd seen a very, very prominent left-leaning person like that take the heat from Democrats the way he did. And so when you think about what's going on, a big medium of communications is a critical thing to have control of. And the Democrats want to get in place this. They've been wanting to do this privacy legislation for a long, long time. They want to require opt-in for sharing of information. And there are a lot of problems with that. I mean, when you go into a Sears and buy a lawnmower, you can leave and you can talk about your purchase at Sears, and Sears can talk about your purchase as well. It kind of goes both ways. Information sharing is kind of the grease that makes the competitive economy work, and you have to be careful about what you clamp down on. But invasive information collection is a problem. That's why they do need to do a lot better job of getting opt-in for certain kinds of information sharing, especially when it's sensitive information. And I think competitive markets can do a better job at that, but the Democrats certainly don't, and we see, too, that Republicans don't. So he got tremendous heat And I think the most interesting takeaway isn't from the hearings. It's going to be what he responds. All that montage you played at the beginning. I'll check with my team. I'll check with my team. That's going to be one of the most interesting things that comes out of this.
Well, do you think anything's going to...
The real push is to get the privacy legislation in place, and that's what the members are jockeying for right now.
Well, Wall Street seemed to like his testimony because in the last 2 days, excuse me, Facebook shares have gone up 5.5%. So that says something.
Yeah, somebody had made that point. They said, "Well, I wonder if his remarks are aimed actually at consumers and the folks who are concerned about Facebook's information collection, or if it's aimed at appeasing Wall Street." And they were saying, "Well, his comments were geared at appeasing Wall Street." It might be. It might help. But, who knows what Wall Street has in mind? Because you've seen how things jump around. I mean, it can go up and down 1% or 2% a day. Since the Trump administration has been really riotous. I just don't remember seeing anything like it. But people are looking to see what's going to happen. Because the thing from this is it's giving you an indication of what Washington has in mind, or its level of understanding with respect to the tech industry and the regulation of it. And there are a lot of things embedded here. It's the privacy debate, it's the cybersecurity debate, and also antitrust has made a comeback. Companies like Facebook and Google are seen to be too large, and you see the Trump administration going after the AT&T Time Warner merger. So there's more of a willingness, and unfortunately it's bipartisan. It would be a different segment if we talk about something like this, but it's unfortunately bipartisan that there's too much interest in the government stepping in when companies get too big. Because I worry about that, because if you have the government step in, you are denying consumers what would have been the competitive response.
Well, right,
and
the exchange on this topic, just to pick on a Republican who I'm happy to pick on, Lindsey Graham, between Lindsey Graham and Zuckerberg, where Graham was trying to get Zuckerberg to admit or concede that Facebook is a monopoly. And he made the point about, other social media platforms that do something akin to what Facebook does, and aspects of Facebook's business. And just the idea of Lindsey Graham, his whole demeanor was from a trust-busting kind of interventionist posture. And, it is disturbing to have Republicans do that, because essentially you're ignoring history, and you're growing government and government intervention into private business.
Yeah, there's no question. The thing is, there's no question that we've got this bias against conservative content, because I guess somebody could run the numbers and tell us for sure, because Zuckerberg tried to say that liberal content was getting blocked too, and certainly terrorism activities and things like that are getting blocked, and nobody was arguing about that. But Lindsey Graham, his comment, and this is kind of typical in the way he would look at the business sector. Are you a monopoly? He asked Facebook, and Zuckerberg said he didn't feel like one. Well, what somebody means like that is you can't ever sit still. And I indicated a while ago that Facebook, I didn't, despite these bias issues, I didn't regard Facebook as a coercive monopoly. There's a difference between that and the utility company that it's illegal to compete against. If you run an extension cord across the street, you go to jail.
That's because there's no such there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a monopoly that exists outside of government sanction.
Right, but guess what though? If we regulate Facebook, if Facebook says, you know what, I'm going to work with SU and Markey, and we're going to come up with some privacy rules. Guess who those privacy rules are going to favor? It's going to favor Facebook.
Of course,
they've already got the worldwide market, and then you're going to have Facebook 100 years from now, the way you have AT&T for 100 years. And I think that's the wrong move. You see what I'm getting at? We've got a lot of ways to begin addressing the bias. And interestingly enough, Facebook's own market isn't secure, because you probably had these conversations too. My kids don't even use Facebook, and the reason is the parents are on Facebook, so the kids aren't using it. So they're using Instagram, which of course that's a Facebook company. But people are doing texting more, and texting is becoming more sophisticated with the things that it does. And your social networks are awesome, but then they tend to shrink around a group that you like. I think a big part of Facebook's initial success was, you used to, you think people before my time, you see these Sunday night movies of, someone meeting their long lost love from high school. Well, Facebook let everybody do that all at once.
I've gone back to
over. We all know each other.
I've gone back to just doing handwritten letters.
Oh, really?
That's the only way I communicate.
The original
For sure.
form.
What did one other just kind of the 2-day takeaway? Did you get the sense when the topic was about protecting people's personal information, as Zuckerberg initially committed to and lied about in the run-up to his run-up at Facebook, which is that he wasn't going to sell people's private information when that's the entire business model. It struck me as a little bit like tobacco CEOs going before Congress to say nicotine is not addictive. That Facebook, whose business model is predicated on exploiting user data, is going to protect user data.
Yeah. That's interesting. The way I would look at it is, when we go on Facebook, we know we're sharing, and he made the points about you opt in for certain individual pictures and things like that. I actually don't have a problem with that. I think the focus, the real problem was the fact that, and here's the thing, when you make decisions about people having the right in a free society to share their information and use it to be able to get free maps and free recommendations and ads that are targeted, and there's a lot of legitimacy to that.
Yeah.
But the big thing here is that Cambridge Analytica leak, and the fact that Facebook was not letting its customer as an individual opt in, but letting that customer or user, for that user's friends, opt all of them in too.
Just like the Obama campaign in 2012, exactly. No,
yeah,
same
thing.
But my point is
that was okay,
right? But not my point is the user data and the opt-ins. I don't have a problem with it either. I'm just saying he's lying. So be honest about what you're doing. Just like the tobacco CEOs, they didn't know nicotine was addictive. They're lying. Be honest about your product.
The question came up about didn't the Obama campaign do that, and wasn't that a problem? He said no, that wasn't a problem. So
right, because we wanted them to win. Right, not a problem. He is Wayne Cruz, Vice President for Policy at the Competitive Enterprise Institute. Wayne, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
What a pleasure. Thank you all for having me. Have a great day.
You too.
Yeah, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.